answered when we get. All right, I think we can officially begin this conversation. Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Hausman. I'm the artistic director of Miami New Drama. I hope I'm going to be here during the entire conversation. I had a little bicycling accident yesterday that included this and a broken knee, but I should be fine. Nothing can keep me away from having a conversation with one of the most exciting minds of the theater field, a dear friend, an artist that we are working with, an artist that you've probably seen produce at some point in your life if you're a theater goer. And we are thrilled to be in conversation today with the great Rogelio Martinez. Rogelio, welcome to MasterMiND, Miami New Drama's masterclass. It's an honor for us to have you here as a guest lecturer.
Thank you, Michelle. I wish I was there in person because it's very rainy in Long Island today. So, but we do have the fireplace going. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, listen. It was today in Miami. It amaneció completely drenched. It was a big rain since very early in the morning. So. And then you go outside, and now it's 90-some degrees. So I'm not sure which of us.
Did it rain a lot?
Yeah, well, it rained for a good 40 minutes, and then.
You know what? It's funny that you bring up rain because one of my favorite words in Spanish is chaparrón.
Chaparrón. It's a beautiful word.
I always want to, I've been trying to figure out how to use it in a play, and it's gonna make it, So. It's a certain word. It's like you have a list of words.
When we do the adaptation of The Tempest, we can just call it chaparrón.
Chaparrón. Yeah. That is great. That is a great idea. But thank you for having me here. As you know, I'm an educator as well as a playwright. And I love talking about the process. So
yeah, I just want to say, Rogelio teaches both at NYU Tisch and at Columbia University at the graduate playwriting.
And I also teach in the law residency program at Goddard College, which is an exciting place.
And you also teach at primary stages.
Yeah,
everybody wants to have a piece of Rogelio.
No, it's something I love the opportunity to teach because it excites me. You don't know where what's the next scene that's going to inspire you. And I think one of the reasons, and I'm really glad that we're doing this, because one of the reasons that I like teaching is that it forces me to sort of articulate those things that I have an instinct about, but they just exist and I follow them. But here we are in a class and here we are in a conversation and I say, okay, why? Tell me. And I say, because, and then I have to sort of be introspective and think about what the reasons are. So, we're talking about things that are based on a true story. And I think you've read some of my plays, right?
Yes, a few of your plays, which are outstanding. And I want to say, and I told you this in person, but I'm going to say it also out loud, sort of like I had an idea of what type of work Miami New Drama wanted to do, not knowing that you existed. And then the minute that I sort of was familiar with your work and I started to reading your plays, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly, if I could try to put into words the type of artist that we gravitate to, the two words are Rogelio Martinez. Because listen, Rogelio, you are a Cuban exile / immigrant. You right. Came in the Mariel boatlift, and you're extremely interested about writing about power, writing about politics, and you have the theme of sort of the Cold War as underlining a lot of your work,
Well, you mentioned coming to this country, exile, immigrant, and the Cold War. And I think that when something has that kind of effect on you, it breaks up a family, then you're going to figure out why. And there are two ways of going about it. And one is looking at it as a family, looking at it from that point of view. And then the other one is to sort of pull the curtain and see who was behind these choices and why were they making those choices. And in my writing, certainly in recent years, I've made the latter choice. This is what I want to write about. I want to write about the people that make choices that affect us for the rest of our lives. And that's actually one of the things that brought me to writing my last play, Blind Date, which is about the first Reagan-Gorbachev summit. I remember how that came about was that I was, I had a long time association with the Denver Center, and they've been very generous to me, and they've been generous to my work. And I remember writing an email to Doug Langworthy, who recently passed, but was an amazing dramaturg. Probably the first person I would show my plays to. We both had a love for Brecht, and Doug was a very special person. And I remember emailing him, and I said, Doug, I want to write a play. I think it's going to be about Reagan, but really what I want to understand is what happened when I landed here? Where am I? What these things? And it's a personal play. And he passed it on to Kent, who was Thompson, who was the director of the Denver Center. And Kent has always been a big supporter of my work, a very gentle man, a very generous man. And he said, yeah, sure, let's commission it and see what happens. And so with that, it was an investigation. It started as an investigation. I did my undergrad. One of the things I studied was journalism. So for me, the research part of it is the most exciting part, and that's where I begin. So and that's where Blind Date began, really.
So this is a great example. You sort of playwrights out there. You have an intuition. You want to write about Reagan. You want to write about the Cold War. And then I know that the end result is something extremely specific and outstanding.
Right.
How do we go from something so broad of having this instinct of this is where I want to go to really figuring out where the story is?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, look, when you're writing a play, and I always tell this to everybody, you're making a 3-year commitment. It's a love affair, right? Because it's going to take you about a year to do it, another year to workshop it, and if you're lucky, in that 3rd year, you'll get the production. So don't go into something unless you are prepared to spend 3 years of your life with it. And so that's the first part. The question about beginning with some kind of instinct and where did you end up is you basically say, I need to know everything possible about the world I'm going to write about, because I have to act responsibly. I'm writing about real people, and I need to get inside their head, and I'm going to make up scenes that never happened, and I'm going to have them say things that they never said, but I need to act responsibly. I need to believe that they could have said them, that they would have said them. And one of the things, as we get into this, I want to share a quote from Thomas Mallon, who is a novelist who often writes, I think the last few books of his have been historical pieces as well. So why don't we just begin with me sharing that quote, because I think it sort of touches on that. So let me just put it up and share it on the screen. Wonders of technology, when it works, and I think it's going to work. So
if not, Jessica is there to help us. She'll solve all of our.
I think it's going to work. All right. So yeah. So here's the quote from Thomas Mallon. Thomas Mallon wrote a book called Watergate, and obviously it was about Nixon. But really what he did was he wrote more about Pat Nixon. And in the book, he took some liberties with the Pat Nixon character, where he sort of, he had her have a flirtatious relationship with another person. This never happened, and he was well aware that it never happened. But he writes about this in this quote, and I think this is a wonderful quote to read. Michelle, how do you feel like reading it?
You know, I think maybe let's hear from the horse's mouth. I'll be reading later if need be, but between the two of us, you arrived to this country way younger than I did.
Okay. So that gives me the right. So he writes, Mrs. Nixon's fictional affair with the merry, mild-mannered Tom Garrahan, however brief and tender, would put it beyond the pale. But I could not let myself jettison the relationship which the book imagines being carried out during the Nixon pre-presidential wilderness years in New York. It represents at worst a small human failing, not remotely comparable by any standard of iniquity to the criminal corruption whose filmmakers imputed to Dewey. He's talking about something else, but here's where it kicks in. I kept exploring this invented romance, which, except for a few last chaste and wistful meetings, comes to an end out of loyalty to her husband. Because when I did, I felt that I was somehow getting closer to the actual Pat Nixon, a warmer, more complicated figure than the one the public surmised. If I had been unwilling to deviate from what Gore Vidal used to call the agreed upon facts, there wouldn't have been much point to writing a novel instead of a history. What I did in Watergate was a small act of novelistic treachery, designed not to diminish Mrs. Nixon, but to make her the emotional heart of my story. I was trying to get at some larger truth through a particular lie, which is finally what all fiction, historical and otherwise, does. And I think that last sentence is worth emphasizing. I was trying to get to some larger truth through a particular lie, which is finally what all fiction, historical and otherwise, has to do. And what I think is really wonderful about that quote is that in order for him to have done that, he really had to have gone into Pat Nixon's head and really understood where she was. And one of the things that I've done some research on Nixon, one of the odd things about that Nixon relationship is he loved his wife dearly. He would, when they first started dating, she was actually dating someone else, and he would drive them to places. But when he was in the White House, he would send memos to her that they were going to have dinner. He would almost write about her in the third, he would be Mrs. Nixon. So there was a little bit of a coldness there. And I felt like when I read Watergate, what Thomas Mallon was trying to figure out is, what is her heart? How does she feel about this? There must be something lacking there. And how does it get expressed? But he would not have come to that. I don't think he was being irresponsible. I think he was being true to the character. He was being true to getting inside of this person's mind and figuring it out.
You know, it's interesting what you're saying, because this I feel that this is a theme that we've come again and again in this lectures of series of telling truth under imagined circumstances.
Under imagined circumstances, yes.
Right, which is the way an actor approaches a role, and it's a way a playwright approaches the work. You might be getting closer to who Pat Nixon was by telling this fictitious story, right, than by actually, doing a biography of her. You explore something of the soul, right, by creating fictitious evidence. Really interesting, no?
Yeah, and clearly Mallon was attracted to the idea of putting Pat forward a little bit more. As a first lady, Pat Nixon was not one of the more vocal first ladies, and she'd always sort of stand in the background. There's a great footage of when Richard Nixon was vice president, having to present all his finances in front of a studio audience, and you see Pat Nixon sitting to the side. And I think what Thomas Mallon did was he just put her center stage and said, "Tell me what you want to say. You couldn't say it. Tell me what you wanted to say, and I'm going to communicate it to other people." And I think that was really a wonderful thing.
You can say, Pat, you can say whatever you want, but at least she never stood on a coat that says, "I really don't care, do you?"
Right.
In the middle.
Right. And as I said, where you begin and where you end is a very different place for a writer. And as I said, I do an amount of research that
So show us. So give us an example. Do you have, because I've seen your computer a little bit, and it's a little bit sort of like getting into your mind. So for example, let's take Blind Date as an example. Show us the research around it.
Yeah, so I'm just going to show you the file that I created when I was researching the play. And I'll say that the play writes itself much more quickly than the research does. Sometimes the research is wonderful. Sometimes it's distracting. Sometimes you want to spend the day reading rather than writing. So it's a form of procrastination almost, but it takes you down this rabbit hole. There's a mention of somebody and immediately you want to know who that other person is. And then you just sort of at the end of the day, you're like, wow, I got nothing done, but I know a lot. Probably knowledge that I will never use. But I'm going to just show you my file that I created.
And let's just give a little bit more background of Blind Date. Blind Date had its world premiere last year, yes?
At the
Goodman Theatre. Yeah. So a big, beautiful production. And it's about the meeting. So tell us a little bit about.
It's the first time that Gorbachev and Reagan meet, and it's also the first time that Secretary General has met an American president since about the Carter years. There have been a long time since that happened. The Soviet Union had gone through 3 leaders. They had died. Brezhnev, Andropov, and Chernenko.
Right, in a matter of months, right? I mean,
18 months between the two, and he never. Reagan didn't attend the funerals, but he did send representatives, and so Gorbachev comes into power, and Reagan senses something. He says, "This person is not going to die next year. We're going to have to deal with this person very, very quickly."
He's young. He's
young, you know, and I can sort of, he is the first Soviet leader born that was not born after the Soviet Revolution. So he was the first one. All of the others had been born prior.
Right.
So he was the first one. So that in itself made him very interesting. And so the two met in Geneva, and how they met and why they met, to me was fascinating, because Reagan was taking a lot of pushback. We were talking about a White House that was extremely hawkish, a White House that said, "Hey, listen, the Soviet Union is in bad shape. Let it play out and see what happens." And there was one voice that said, "No, if we let it play out, if you back an opponent up against a wall, they may do something that will come to regret. So we have to give them, if we're going to give them the exit, we have to give it to them graciously in a way that they can accept." And that person was George Shultz. And I didn't know that going into the writing of it.
So you had no idea of George Shultz's existence?
I sort of knew about George Shultz, but to be honest with you, I had never read anything that he had said. I never, and so when I started to write, go ahead.
No. And so this person, so you had an instinct, and then you had no idea that this person, George Shultz, was going to be the lead of the play.
Absolutely, yeah. So I start to do research, and my instinct is Reagan is the main character. And I write about 40 pages, and I was going to use the fact that Reagan had Alzheimer's late in his life, and to sort of come in and out, weave myself in and out of his life story. And then I said, the guy lived over, 78, 80. This is too much. This is not interesting. You can watch a documentary. I have to zero in on one point.
One moment.
So that's the first step. I zeroed in on one point. Once I zeroed in, I then said to myself, well, now that I've zeroed in, I have to figure out who George Shultz is. So let me just walk you through it, because I have a great story about George Shultz, because I eventually met him. but we'll get to that.
Well, yeah. Now I'll ask you, was it harder to write about somebody after you meet them? You feel a sense?
Oh, absolutely. You don't want to meet. You know,
you don't want to meet.
The play was almost locked when I met him. You don't want to meet that person because I hate to be glib, but writing is a form of betrayal. And the person that you don't want to become friends with the person that you're writing about because, you know, but let me just go into my files and just share this with you. Just see how I'm going to do this. Share the screen. So share. Okay. So I think you can see this, right? So I had opened the file called Reagan. You see that? Was they able to see it? Mm-hmm. And so I just went right through, see how many books I read at the time, and I just went right through the entire, anything I could find about it. Anything I could find. I just kept going and going. You know, it's like chasing a story. And it came up.
Wow, it's Energizer Bunny. You're going.
Yeah, but you know, then you arrive to things like this: an interpreter's worst nightmare, and you're like, how is that going to help you? Well, it turns out that in the room with Reagan and Gorbachev, there was no recording. There were only two people, and they were the interpreters. And so once I got thinking about that, I was being given a lot of liberty because there's no recording of what their meetings were like, other than the sort of the little notes that said they talked about this. So things that you don't know how they're going to help you end up helping you. So, you know, as you can see, it's very, very.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed. I knew you did research, but this is really.
Yeah, it just goes on, you know, and on and sort of, you know.
Does any of this live, like, do you have a wall in which you put stuff up the wall, or does everything live in your computer? Everything
lives in my computer. And then, you know, and the thing about research is that you do it, and eventually some, you know, things that you know, when I was looking at this list again, there are things I'm like, oh, I did not take advantage of this.
Right.
But you can't, you know, you can't take advantage of it all. And so what you do is you do all the research and then you start to write, because what you remember is what's important to the telling of the story.
That's it.
So, you know, as you're reading it, you just keep going, sort of, it's, you know, it just sort of goes. And then I have no idea why Carly Simon, I wouldn't kick myself out of bed,
ended up in the list.
I have no idea. No idea. I apologize. But I like Carly Simon, but I have no idea how that ended up on that list. I'm not going to open the file because I don't know what it is. But you see, it just goes sort of on and on until we get here. And then sort of one of the things that broke it for me was the fact when I started to find the information in the Reagan Library. And that was really exciting. I can't tell you how exciting it is to read documents that were initially classified. You know, you read a document, a letter from George Shultz that says top secret right on it, or for the president's eye only. And you feel this incredible rush of like, wow, I'm you know, everybody loves a secret. And I think that's part of the excitement. Everybody loves a secret. So when I did that, I'm just gonna sort of share this other part with us. This is from the Reagan Library. And this is one of the things that I discovered. There are so many files that have been digitized. And one of the things that I discovered was the fact that it was, you know, the Reagans hosted a dinner during the summit, and the Gorbachevs hosted a dinner. But here was the invitation to the dinner that they were going to have. Let me just see. This is a different one. No, this is so here's the dinner. This is this invitation. The other invitation was for another event. But it tells you exactly what they were going to serve that night. It's sort of, these are just it sort of follows who was going to be there, where they were, interestingly enough, it tells you where they were going to sit. And if you notice, the Secretary of State, which is the main character, is sitting here, a very important place. And it just follows. And then there are handwritten notes, which I love. So how is that important? Well, you start to get into the head of people who, the choice of what's on the menu is sort of, it's saying, this is diplomacy. What we're going to serve has to sort of, it's not, just what we love. We have to sort of, it's diplomacy in action. So anything, when you go on a date, and you love sushi and the person doesn't love sushi, you're not going to go to a sushi restaurant. If you marry them, you're going to force them to go to a sushi restaurant. But this is a blind date. This is a first time.
I was going to say, it's a blind date, yes.
You're putting your best foot forward here. And then, this is sort of the schedule of what they're going to be doing while they're there.
Right.
So these kinds of things were really important. You go to the Reagan Library itself. If you notice, there are talking points. So every time he made a speech, he had this list of talking points, and then he improvised from that. So these were just like the talking points. Then we get to somewhere really, where is it? This to me was an incredible discovery, which was every single letter that was exchanged between Reagan and the Soviets. And if we see here, it's the first letter that Reagan sent to Gorbachev. And it's key. Reagan reached out first. And then you just click and it tells you the first letter. And it's a very simple letter. And it's a letter that says, congratulations, and I hope we can work together. And now that letter has been sent, Gorbachev has to now respond to the letter. And then here you have the letter. Gorbachev's letter is much longer. And already there's the discussion of a meeting. So here, that's part of the excitement. It's the journey. And so once I started to discover those files existed, that to me was the tipping point. That's when all that other information was just me filling myself up with things.
So when you found the letters about, a potential meeting, etc., is that what it clicked?
That's when it clicked. Yeah, that's when it clicked. I was like, oh wow. And they're also vague enough that there's enough room for you, the writer, to enter.
Right.
And they're also speaking in code, which I think it's one of the pleasures of writing the play, is that two people are sitting across from one another, and you don't. They may be speaking about one thing, but in fact they're speaking about another. Right. Which is actually one of the reasons that I want to share the first scene of the play.
Right. But restaurant scene.
Yeah. But this is a good moment to just pause and see if there are any questions that pop up. And then we'll go into.
Well, we had Marta Fernandez ask pretty much that. At what moment were you zeroing on the story? I think we can sort of like leave a few of the questions towards the end of the session, and we'll have enough time to try to go through them. And by the way, I just want to let people know, so at some point we are going to be doing a writing exercise today. And okay, so you zero in on the idea, and then talk to us about that first draft.
Michelle, it's really interesting. Characters sort of force themselves into a play.
Yeah, you always say that.
They say, this is my play. I am going to hijack the play. It's not, and it happened with the play that we've been working on, Come As You Are, a character, the last character that arrived in the play.
Was the one that took over
wanted to take over the play. Yeah. So when I was writing Blind Date, I said, restaurants, I like restaurants. I like restaurants. I like places, steakhouses. I like places that have power in them. And I said, I'm going to set the first scene in a restaurant. I don't know what it's about. And then I just put George Schultz, and suddenly he decided to step forward and talk. I honestly did not have the idea that he was going to address us.
And I love that. That's you had me when, you know, when the lead character, again, as a good student of Brecht, you went and just talked to us and told us what's up.
Yeah, I had, you know, and I had no idea he was going to step forward. And then I think what we'll do is we'll look at the scene. We'll have two people read it, either us or two other people. But because there's a key element to the scene that I want to share, having to do with when you write plays based on a true story and historical events. And the important thing is that the play still has to be about you. It still has to be about you. And and you have to have a very strong emotional point of view in the story. And so let's sort of just look at that scene. Let me see if I can pull it up.
So maybe, yeah, I think Jessica might have found somebody to read it. And I wonder, seeing the list of participants, I see, I don't know. So one of my favorite actors that we like to work with is Ana Graham and Antonio Vega. And I don't know if the Antonio Vega participating here today is the Antonio Vega from the Mexican theater company Propiedad. But if you are Antonio, raise your hands so we might use you to read. You know, raise your virtual hand, and we might use you to read the scene. But if not, we can know Jessica. Jessica found somebody. Yes, Jessica. Who do we have that could read the scene?
Juan Arturo.
Juan Arturo. Okay. So let's, Jess, can you bring Juan Arturo into the panel, please?
Yep, I just sent an invite.
Gosh, let me just write this. And okay, and then, well, so maybe you can read George Schultz. Juan, are you there?
I saw him for a moment.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, hey, Juan.
Okay, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Do you wanna, Rogelio? Do you wanna? I mean, I would definitely volunteer, but I think you would be a much better reader of your play. Is that okay? Maybe.
Yeah, that's good. That's
you
good.
And Juan, you take George Schultz. Does that make sense? So we can force Rogelio to do a Russian accent, which it's the whole purpose of this. I'm really looking forward to it. Is that good, Rogelio?
I am going to try with a Russian accent, and I'm slowly going to slip into it. I've never done it on Zoom, and
it's the first, everyone.
And it's for the permanent record of you know, and you know, Cubans are very, very afraid of anything. So the fact that this is being recorded has me already on the edge, right? Because so yes, I am going to try it. So I'm going to go for it. So
all right.
Maybe Jessica, you could read the stage directions.
Could I just very quickly, how do you pronounce the last name?
Let's Schultz or Shevardnadze?
That one, Shevardnadze. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready? Great. Act 1, Scene 1, a light on George Schultz, Secretary of State.
March 1985. The restaurant was Old Ebbitt Grill a few steps away from the White House. Present was Eduard Shevardnadze, Soviet Minister of Foreign Affairs, and myself. Mr. Shevardnadze was a highly educated man. He spoke English, Romanian, and Hungarian.
And
A light
French.
on Edward Shevardnadze.
And French. In front of me sat George Shultz, Secretary of State. He played the role of nice guy, but I was not deceived. Before this, he worked in the Nixon White House and did not go to jail. That fact alone told me he was dangerous. Now, let me just stop there for a second. Two lies have already been committed in this. One was caught, which was there are no restaurants near the White House. So but I think I found Old Albert Grill because I just looked around power restaurants. But the other was that Shevardnadze did not speak Romanian, Hungarian, or French. He didn't. But he wanted to in the play, and I didn't see a reason. It's a little lie. He wanted to. He wanted to show off, you know. So, yeah.
No, I was going to say, as a director who's sort of like training how to, this first exchange tells you so much about the play. It tells you about the style of the play. It tells you about the tone of the play. It tells you about the relationship between audience and characters. So just those two sentences already inform how we should continue to read the play.
Right, absolutely. And there's already, the thing is, when people go see plays based on a true story, they expect a little bit of a stiffness, like they may get a history lesson. So I know that we have to slip a laugh in there, right at the top, so that the audience relaxes and says, "Oh, I'm seeing a play." Right. So I'm
smart enough for this one, right? That's sort of like the fear that everybody secretly has: is this play smarter than I am?
Right. So we have to, disarm, get a laugh, get on with it. So go ahead. I recommend ordering it.
I recommend ordering it. It's delicious. They call it the Congress combo, a martini glass for the shrimp, another for your drink.
Interesting combo.
During Prohibition, they didn't know what to do with all the martini glasses laying around, so they invented the shrimp cocktail.
I never cared for gin.
Vodka-tini? In my younger years, it went by the kangaroo.
What is a kangaroo?
A vodka martini. Why it was first called that, no one knows. In fact, these days, try ordering a kangaroo and you won't get anywhere. The bartender here is an old friend. He'd probably know.
Americans, sometimes.
What is it?
If it's not your politics, it's the name you give to drinks. You don't understand why you do half the things you do.
We are working on it.
Are you sure?
Well, there are things that have been in place so long, we've stopped questioning them.
I agree.
We're wondering if it's not time we start to question them again.
Then you do this for me. You go and find out why vodka martini is called kangaroo. Find out reason and see if it's possible to begin to make sense of this.
I call it gardening. You plant a garden, but if you don't take care of it, what do you have? Weeds. We'd broken off talks with the Soviets when they first invaded Afghanistan 6 years earlier. Now, the garden was overgrown with weeds.
And now the waiter is there. Mr. Schultz? I'll be waiting.
The same as always.
Good. And you, sir?
Shrimp cocktail.
The Congress combo?
I will drink a Manhattan, young man. Jim Beam, 2 cherries, one placed on a wooden skewer, but the second cherry just let swim freely in the whiskey.
Let's swim freely in the whiskey.
Correct.
Waiter exits. They have little to say, but then...
Americans are starting to recycle.
What was that?
We're starting to recycle plastic.
I have heard this. It is being made mandatory.
In some states, yes.
And what is the cost if you don't do it?
A fine. It's all very new.
Some strong-arm tactics do make sense. Would you not agree, Mr. Secretary?
I haven't given it much thought.
You should.
Schultz reaches for an envelope, but just as he is about to hand it over, the waiter returns with their orders. Here you are, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Jones.
A Manhattan for you, 2 cherries.
Jim Beam.
As you requested.
Hold on, Jones. If you don't mind asking Peter to come by when he gets the chance.
Have you decided what you're having for lunch, gentlemen?
Yes.
The waiter goes. The letter remains in Schultz's hand in a kind of no man's land. It's clear Shevardnadze sees the letter. He smiles and then...
Let's eat.
Schultz puts the letter down on his own side of the table.
The first thing I learned in preparatory school was how to eat shrimp cocktail. In business and important meetings, you eat it using a small fork. With friends, you use your hands.
He used his hands. There was a fork, but he used his hands.
I wanted him to believe we were just friends out for a weekly lunch. I wanted to create a certain intimacy between the two of us, a trust.
In the Soviet Union, when strangers meet for a first lunch, we always use fork.
Once he chose the fork, I felt foolish. I had miscalculated his ability to see through me.
I was not his friend, but I also did not want to be his enemy. In the spirit of compromise, at some point, I used my hands.
Soon, we focused our attention on the thing most important to both of us, our grandchildren.
Shevardnadze places a small photograph on Schultz's side of the table, on the letter.
Her name is Sofo. She loves the piano and dance. I believe she has talent, but who am I to decide?
You're her grandfather. That gives you some right to believe in her future.
It gives me the right to pay for her future. There is the saying in Soviet Union, we must give financial support to our grandchildren until they reach pension age.
No difference here.
I am one who sees possibility, but also the complicated road to get there. I want a future for her.
Shevardnadze picks up the picture and looks at it carefully. Then, as if he were addressing the little girl in the picture.
I feel for her because any noble pursuit always leads to disappointment.
Not always.
Enough with the suspense, Mr. Secretary. You can turn the letter over to me now. And let's stop there. Thank you, Juan.
Yeah, of course.
And so there's a lot going on here, but the thing that I was saying about based on a true story and how important it is to find the emotional component. I write in chaos. My children are often all over the place in this house, and I don't mind. They come in and out, and so I'm sure what happened at this moment was that my daughter came in, who dances and plays. She doesn't play the piano, but she dances. And I'm sure at that moment I said, this play is about two men who want to secure a future for their grandchildren. That's all they want. It just happens that they are very powerful men. But there's the need they have, the want, it's a very simple one. It's a grandchildren. And does Shevardnadze have a grandchild named Sofo, or does he have, at some point I think he says he has 9, or I don't know, nor do I care. I know he has grandchildren, and I know what grandchildren mean to people. And so that was a discovery. So as I was writing the play, you draw as much from your life as you draw my father-in-law's favorite drink is the Manhattan. So, there's no research involved.
Is that how he orders it?
No, not at all. But I had to make it so specific.
Specific, but that's the beauty of it, and that's a theme that we've talked about. The specific always makes it universal.
Yeah.
Right? When something really goes down to specific, it suddenly opens up and pulls us in.
Yeah. So that was sort of the nature of it. It was as much truth as it was as much about my life as it was about the life of these two people. And pretty much everything sticks sort of to the truth. That's how diplomacy works. And they're talking in code. They're talking in code. And by the way, talk about research. One of the things we looked up, one of the things I discovered was that there was a drink called a kangaroo, and it was a vodka martini. And I swear, I don't know where I found that, and I know it's true. And then we spent the next 2 years trying to find the source of that. And I think at the end, they talk about it, and they said, we'll never know, but yeah, there was a drink called the kangaroo. So if there's a great bartender out there, step forward and tell us what
the kangaroo,
what the accuracy is of it. So So that's the opening scene. And so pretty much everything that's going to happen in the plays, it's established there.
And you can also establish both, you know, each character trying to take the lead. They're trying to assert their power. So it's a very subtle, friendly sort of, you know, I don't want to call it a sword fight, but there is, right? Each of them trying to, and that's great for both directors and actors to be performing. You give, you know, great red meat.
Yeah. So it was a fun scene to write, and it sort of wrote itself. The Congress combo made up, you know. So, you know, I think the reason we do all the research is so that it gives us permission to make things up when we sit down to write, and we feel confident.
This is your world. The world that you're talking about is a world you know, and therefore you can invent it.
Yeah, I completely feel confident that this is George Schultz. He may never have said any of these things, but this is George Schultz. He went to prep school. He would have been this kind of a gentleman, and Shevardnadze is. I'm 100% sure that if this meeting took place, a form of this meeting took place. So that's what the research does. It really allows you to get in there and make things up. So yeah, so that was a sort of and as I said, the characters just stepped forward and they wanted to talk, and I just let them, and I just wrote with them.
And so when you start with the idea, this is how a character begins. Do you imagine how that character ends? What is the journey, or does the journey surprise you?
The journey surprises me. You know, this is the difficult thing between writing a treatment for a film and writing a play. A treatment, you have to sort of really plot it out. A play, you are letting them take you wherever they want to take you. I have no idea where it's going to end until I pretty much get to the end. And that's the pleasure. I think that if I knew where it was going to end, I would be, I would get bored. I would not be able to follow it. So I never, yeah.
No, then after you finish that first draft that takes you where your intuition takes you, do you then take a step back and sort of become your own dramaturg of your work and start? How does that, you know, from phase 1 to phase 2 work?
Well, phase 1, you try to overwrite, and phase 2, you start to say, what is this scene really about? And so if the scene is about the grandchildren, at what point are you going to introduce the grandchildren, and how are you going to introduce them? Grandchildren were always there, but how do you make that the sort of the clincher of the scene? So how does that relate to him handing the letter over? So, you know, an early draft of this play was 130, 140 pages. And so by the time we got it up on its feet, it was about 100 pages. So there was some cutting to do, and some stuff we learned along the way. So the second draft is a little bit of about, hey, what was I saying with this play? What did I want to say with this play? And that's, you know, this is a technique. Writers often ask other writers, read my play, give me notes. Right. And I think you know, and I've done this with you. I said, read my play and then write the blurb. Don't give me notes. Write the blurb, because I want to see if your blurb, the way you think about this play, matches up with mine. Right. And if yours matches up with mine, then I'm doing something right. I'm communicating something. If you say something completely different, then I know something's off with the play, that what I'm saying is not being communicated. And so it's up to me to get back and say, why is it that what I'm saying is not being communicated? Right. It's not your responsibility to tell me that. Your responsibility is to tell me, what do you think the play is about? What's the blurb? I literally say, please write me, you know, 8 or 9 lines of like how you would market this play. And then I compare that with what I'm thinking. And if it matches up, great. If it doesn't, then it's back to the drawing board.
So Margie is asking the Russian saying about supporting your grandchildren until the pension. Is that a real saying?
Yeah, definitely. definitely real saying. That kind of stuff you research, and so yeah, that was definitely something I found out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So you read this play, and this play has like 142 characters, more or less. It's it has a really,
Right.
it's epic in nature.
Right.
Now, most writers, as they write, they're saying, I have to write a two-hander, a three-hander, otherwise I won't get produced.
I don't think that way. I think the opposite. I say that I write as big of a play as I want to write, as big of a play, and it may not get a lot of productions, but it's going to attract a lot of talent, because directors are going to want to take on that beast. Mm-hmm. Designers are going to want to design this play. People are going to want to work on it because it's challenging them. And so I write a play that's going to challenge you. I don't, one thing that Jose Rivera says, that I had just, is write impossible stage directions. And that, that's like one of my big ones, write impossible stage directions, because somebody out there is so smart and so talented that they're going to make it possible, but it's not my responsibility. Right. So I don't really write small plays. As I say, they don't get as many productions as I would hope or would enjoy, but
it's you know what, I love it, and we're eager to produce them, because that is something that in a way has been lost a little bit in the American theaters, this idea of making things smaller. And I mean, everybody, don't take away their big sets, right? That's but sort of like big stories that really want to tell you something epic, something larger. Those stories are sort of left for television, for film. Right. And it's a shame, because they're never as effective as they are in theater. Although, listen, the last 10 years, there have been a few like big epic political plays that have done well. But I am, as a producer, director, very thankful that somebody's writing those big, a big idea, big cast, big political, really taking us into a moment in time. I love them.
Well, one of the things, Simon Stevens, in his book, Working Diary, I think it's called A Working Diary, he says that people go to the theater to see the set changes.
Right. Right.
And he's not, he's being sincere about it. He's being like saying like, that theater has a razzle dazzle. It's magic. It's happening in front of you. It's not, that it can go wrong at any moment. That set change. Listen, I'll tell you what, the first time that we did the first preview of this play, we got to stop it a quarter of the way in. You know why? The actor playing Reagan was in the bathroom. He had gone to the bathroom and had missed his entrance. So we had to like stop the play and wait. And then, and it's almost like you couldn't write it. I mean, it wasn't Schultz, it wasn't Shevardnadze, it was Reagan.
It was Reagan, of course, out of everyone.
So it was like, I felt like, and I love those mistakes. I love things, because I don't know if you've ever been in the theater when something's gone wrong, but your heart starts to race and you're like, I am seeing something that has never happened before and will not happen again. And that is a privilege. I saw a Susie Laurie Parks many years ago called The America Play. And in this play, Lincoln gets, I forget the sort of, this is, 30 years ago now, 25 years ago, and Lincoln keeps getting shot in the play. And there was a little kid in the audience. And every time Lincoln got shot, the kid would start laughing. And every time the kid started laughing, then the audience would start laughing. That was not what the play, but it gave the evening a humanity. It felt right. It felt like you were in a very special place. And that's the thing, those are the things that theater can give you is that, I was telling you this. I said, if I could write a mistake into a play, and it, I would do it, because a mistake makes you feel, as an audience member, special. It makes you feel like
it makes you root for the production, right?
Root for the production. Audiences are there to root for the production, and they want to help you.
Yeah.
And so it's that's the magic of theater. Film can't do that. Television can't do that. It's clean.
Cannot do that. Yeah.
It's already done. So it's not, the mistakes are not going to happen. Right. How many of us, sometimes I look for continuity mistakes when I'm bored, but in the theater, it's different. It's live every night, and every night that performer has to be on. So this is a good moment. We're about to hit the first hour, and I think it's a good moment to do the writing exercise. Oh, absolutely, great.
How about that? And then we're probably going to finish 40 minutes from now, 45 minutes from now. So we'll give 5 minutes for the writing exercise, and then we'll be able to share what folks wrote and hopefully answer a couple questions. So tell us.
So the writing exercise is in a couple of parts. It's sort of you get to someplace. But I think the first part is it's just pitch me a story. Tell me who you want to write about. Avoid somebody in the news today. I would encourage you to avoid that, because their narrative is still being written.
So Kellyanne Conway, no Kellyanne Conway suggestions.
No,
right,
no.
Okay.
But it's something. The person can still be alive. The events could have unfolded 10 years ago, but all I want to know is why should I be excited about it? So what I want you to do in the next 4 minutes is think of something and make me excited about it. Make me just say, hey, this is what I want to write about. Are you willing to support it? And the thing the other aspect of the exercise is that the person should be someone that sort of we know things about. We may not know them intimately, but we know 1 or 2 details about them. We can know more, but it's something that, yeah.
So is this a form of a paragraph? Should they write?
Yeah, so it's basically 8 sentences, saying, hey, this is who I'm interested in. I want to write about this person because I think this person is, and this is why I'm interested. And I think this is why this play needs to be written right now. And this is why you need to do it. So it's almost like, for lack of, to be crude, it's almost a pitch.
Right. Yeah. All right. So we'll take a 5-minute break.
Take 5 minutes, and then we're going to sort of continue down the exercise lane. So let's just take a 5-minute break.
Perfect.
I'll hit stop video and I'll mute myself.
Okay. I'm sorry. So
right. So think about, I just want you to think about history or historical characters or as a crowded elevator. I want you to think about it as a crowded elevator. There's like 10 plays written about Nixon, and you could write 10 more. But how do you get into that elevator? And how do you muscle your way into that elevator where so many people how many different people have written? So the key to figuring out how to write about a historical event or about a person is figuring out your way in that's unique. And what I often tell writers is that they have 2 options. One is look to the left or to the right of that person, somebody who is in the background, somebody who doesn't say as much, and put this person in the front and put the main person in the back. So switch. If you can't think of somebody, then make someone up. But so once you have that should take you 30 seconds. Once you have that, what I want you to do is I just have this person do a direct address. So for example, if we were looking at Blind Date, Schultz would step forward and say, Ronald Reagan was an important president because he did this, this, and that. But about 5 sentences in, you're going to flip it a little bit and say, but he could not have done it without me. These things could not have happened. So to sort of put it in context, after every administration, there's a bunch of memoirs written, and we all want to put ourselves center stage, and that's what happens. All these memoirs are written, and it's themselves putting themselves in center stage and saying, I was integral to the story, that the narrative that happened in these last 4 years. So basically, you're taking a character that may or may not be real. The character will explain why this person is important, and then they're going to explain why they're critical to that person's life. Does that make sense, Michelle?
I think it does. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to take another 5 minutes
And
for
then
folks to do that.
Then we can listen to it.
And then we can listen to it, and,
Yeah.
and that sounds great. All right, so let's take another 5 minutes. Feel free to take the video off if you want, or
Yeah.
I'll mute myself. Your gin and tonic, by the way, your kangaroo looks amazing.
Oh, the kangaroo. No.
Yeah.
All righty.
Okay, so it's 12:08.
I'm going to drink
so,
it without you looking at me. All righty.
And we're slowly waking up. And so great. So we're now, Rogelio, you're there. We're good to go.
Yeah.
For anybody wants to share with us. You want them to type it out, or do you want them to read it, Rogelio?
No, it's reading it is great. Reading out loud is
great.
But I just read Margie.
Right.
I think that's great. I think that's a great character to write about.
It's funny. Miami New Drama has her as one of the lead characters in a play we've been developing for a year now. It's not exactly about her, but she. So it's good.
I think it's maybe she could read that and then what she wrote so that she can share it. Who she wants to write about, and then she can share what she writes.
So we have now 2 people have raised their hands. We have Lowell Williams, who's also a friend of the company, and we're probably going to get about 6 or 7 people.
Okay.
So hopefully we get a chance to do more. So let's bring Lowell. Lowell, let's you can turn on your camera, Lowell. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You want to turn on your camera?
If I can, let me see.
Well, if you can, then just it'll be fine. You just
let me just read, because I don't want to lose you trying to turn the camera on.
Go for it, my friend.
Okay, I just basically wrote 7 questions I had about a play. Actually, this is an idea I already have in mind, and it's about the historical character Nat Turner. And so I wrote, here are the sentences. I want to explore Nat Turner, the Black revolutionary. And I want to explore the impact that race has on America and how it's being played out today. 3rd question, whites don't want to be reminded of slavery. Blacks are tired and ashamed of the impact of slavery. Race is in every aspect of American life. I just had a discussion and it came out, and somebody said I'm always playing the race card. And what do we see right now? We see that the COVID-19 has a special effect on people of color. So even within this pandemic, race is playing a part. Then I raised a question, are Blacks, do they want to go the route of the Second Amendment, everybody get guns and start killing white people, as Nat Turner did? And so those are some of the things I want to explore, possibly from a historical perspective: slavery, racism, and hatred and killing.
right. Thank you, Lowell. Did you write a character moment or just this?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, thank you. This is, I think, a very interesting pitch. What do you think, Rogelio?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think now what you need to do is look to who was standing to the left and to the right of Nat Turner. Dig in, do that research. Who was there with Nat Turner? And I think you may start to find the play, because you'll come at it from an angle that is completely fresh. Clearly, you feel passionate about it. I agree with many of the ideas you discussed. And so sometimes doing what Brecht does, which is setting it in the past or removing it into a foreign land, allows us to, it disarms us and allows us to absorb what it is that you want to say, and allows us to make the leap into COVID-19, for example.
Right. That's a great advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have Nancy. Nancy, we're bringing you up. We're unmuting you. You can turn on the video if you want.
Hi, Nancy, you're talking. Let's see.
Nancy, I can hear you.
You can hear me. Let's see. Now I'm not going to bother with the video.
Don't worry.
It's just not obvious.
Don't worry about it.
Anyway, this is just wonderful. I really thank the both of you for taking the time to do this. There's a character, it's interesting, you know, the take Lowell wants to take. I'm an African-American woman. One of the women I really would like to give voice to is Bessie Stringfield. She was a motorcyclist. She was the first African-American woman to cross the United States alone, to do this solo. She was also one of the few civilian motorcycle dispatch riders for the Army during World War II, carrying messages back and forth. She also was a liar, especially about her origins, which makes me think,
that's great.
She's perfect for me to make stuff up about, right?
Yeah.
She obviously broke barriers, but her story is also obviously one of America. We know how America of that time is portrayed in popular culture, in movies, in history books, in our imaginations. We know who the heroes are and we know who gets left out. Bessie must be included. For me, it's a matter of mining the unknown history of this country, the unacknowledged and the initially rejected. My inspiration, most recently, my short-term inspiration has been the New York Times itself has gone back into its archives and is writing profiles and obituaries of women, of minorities, of people whose deaths just fell by the wayside decades ago. And they are exploiting their huge archives, which I would love to run barefoot through, to revive these people, give new life to these people and to American history. Long-term, what makes this about me is that, and I always cry when I say this, but I'm standing on these women's shoulders. I have not had their lives. I have not had their mothers' lives. I have had a relatively easy life. I am standing on their shoulders because of the crap they went through.
Yeah.
That's it.
Nancy, thank you. I mean, that's a terrific. I know what you're talking about as far as the obituaries.
Right.
I failed to say that the first thing I read in the morning are the obituaries.
You are addicted to obituaries.
I have a file with obituaries. And I do see that they're now printing these people that originally were not given their obituary. And so when I hear your story, a couple of things excite me. One is I don't know who the person is, right? So, and it gives you a lot of room to explore what your feelings and your ideas. But the other thing is what you said very at the beginning, which is that she traveled cross country, right?
Right.
And
I mean, we're talking the 40s.
And I think that's great. I think that's always really good. I had a play called Bicycle Girl about the photographer Ruth Orchid, who at 17 or 18 got permission from her parents to travel cross country to the 1939 World's Fair. And so the idea was that I was going to show what the country was at that time.
Exactly.
And I think one of the advantages of writing a road trip is that there's already an action. The thing is always moving forward.
Yeah, you have to go from point A to point B.
Right. So
that
you
helps you in
already
the structure of the play.
right. So you're already starting at it. You're already starting at an advantage. And then the other thing is you're going to be dropping this character into different situations. So I encourage you to go for it, because when I hang this up, I'm like, okay, I'm going to Google who this person is because I'm interested. So you sold me on road trip.
Hot dog. You could write my blurb.
Thank you.
Even Brecht, a Caucasian chalk circle, it's a road trip. It's a road trip, right? And that's so well.
Mother Courage is a road trip.
Mother Courage is a road trip, yeah. So,
and it's about all the things that she loses, and it's basically about how when you profit off war, there are personal consequences. But he sets it, in the past. So, why don't we have Margie read?
I just promoted into the panelists Antonio Vega. By the way, one of my favorite theater makers, him and Anna Graham are a duo of extraordinary theater makers. Can you hear us, Antonio?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm asking you to start a video. Can you accept if you feel comfortable?
I think the audio is okay, right?
Yeah.
You can do audio, yes, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I went straight to to the second part, more fiction than history, because I don't know anything. I just thought about Pepe Mujica.
The former president of Uruguay.
Of Uruguay, yeah. So can I just read what I wrote? It's
absolutely, go for it. Yeah.
It says, everybody loves El Pepe. Yes, he's adored. Great sense of humor. But, great sense of humor. Everybody knows that. Out there with the Tupamaros, 12 years in prison, and then to become president, people probably wouldn't love him as much as they do if they knew one or two things about him. Things that you only tell to a fellow prisoner. A fellow prisoner that had a big role in putting him there in the presidential chair. Maybe if you knew those things, though, you would love him even more. But is that a good thing? That's it.
That's terrific. I mean, it reminds me a little bit, like, even when you said that first line, which you said something like everybody loves, right? I forget what the first line was that you said.
Yeah, El Pepe. That's the.
Yeah. When you said that, immediately I thought of Amadeus, because everybody loves Mozart, and basically what Salieri is saying is, hey, hold back, because this guy took his talent for granted. And in fact, the real star of that was me. I thought it was great. I don't know if you made up his jail cellmate or not.
Yeah, I just made it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I believed it though. I believed it. I think it was exciting. Yeah.
Well, listen, Miami New Drama rarely commissions something by a pitch, but Antonio, I'm excited about whatever you you do. We'll always.
I'm excited to
by
read
the way,
it.
they did one of the most beautiful theatrical experiences of my life is seeing Anna and Antonio perform A Special Day.
You're very kind.
No, but it's really outstanding. We produced it twice in Miami for just a couple of weekends, and we might produce it again because it's just so amazing. So thank you for participating, Antonio.
Yeah,
Antonio,
thank you.
Okay, so we can now move. So you wanted to bring in. Well, I think people need to raise their hands in order for us to bring them. So Tanya Glinsky is the next person. We'll allow her in. Right. Yes. Tanya.
Hi,
Tanya, can you
I'm
hear
here.
Us? All right.
I can hear you.
Very lovely to hear you. How are you doing?
Good. So I would like to write about Hugo Chavez, but I would like to write really about his wife. So
which one? Which one?
The idea would be
the first one or the second one?
The second one. So the idea is it's Chavez's daughter's birthday party. Chavez's wife. So it's in a table, and it's about the people who are invited in the party, and we're gonna look at Chavez, not from his point of view, but from the point of view of people who are there. And there's three people sitting. One is a young, idealistic military man who studied in Paris, one of the first supporters of Chavez and his right hand. There's the owner of a large construction firm and his wife, and they are having an affair. And so we're going to see Chavez like the marionette playing with these three characters. And the idea is that to cover her tail, she helps the construction worker obtain government contracts. And we see everything that happens in the country through the conversations of these three characters and their personal stories, which will be uncovered in the conversations because all takes place during a child's birthday party. So we see how idealism, corruption, and human nature are entangled, and every character has a want and none are able to achieve it. So one wants love, the other one wants money, the other one wants power, the other one wants justice. And we see how Chavez is like the person who's doing the marionettes, playing with all of these characters. And I mean, it's an idea that came out in 4 minutes.
What does the young idealist want?
So he wants justice. He's a socialist. He really believes in Chavez's project, and he wants justice. Did you see? And the construction worker wants money, and the wife wants love.
You know, because idealists rarely get what they want.
Right.
They put. So did you see Last King of Scotland?
No.
It's a terrific film. It's about Amin, right? Is it?
Yes, Idi Amin.
Idi Amin, but it's told from the point of view of his doctor, a young man who, right after med school, goes and becomes his doctor and his confidant. And it's an amazing film because he's idealistic. He sees Amin through these eyes, and he falls in love with Amin. And little by little, he realizes that the person he fell in love with is not the person that he is. You know, and he eventually escapes. But it's a great film. I encourage everyone to see it. It's one of the best films of the last 10 years. Yeah, outstanding.
Okay.
Tanya, did you write a little monologue or?
I did. Well, actually, I was at Chavez's birthday party for his daughter, and I lived a conversation. Of course, the wife is an invented story, but I did have conversation with an idealist socialist who supported him at the beginning, with him and many others. And it was very interesting for me to be there and to experience that. And I just thought that when you talked about, talking about a historical figure from the point of view of someone else, that it would be human nature really could be shown through these three characters, and all of them having different wants and needs, and somehow we see the historical figure in a different light.
Well, the two things I'll say is idealists are great to write about because they're eventually disappointed. So it's funny that in the party you spoke to the idealist. And then the other thing is birthday parties are great because corruption surrounds children. And so innocence clashes up against the reality they're going to have to face and the mess these people are going to create. So there's something really powerful just about a children's party. So I congratulate you on putting these elements together. So yeah.
Wonderful.
Thanks. Thank you for your opinion.
Thank you, Tanya. All right, so we move on with Jack Cameron. Jack, can you hear us? Jack?
Yes, I can.
Great.
Yeah,
All
I can hear you.
So Tell
So,
us your pitch and monologue, por favor.
okay, sure. I just came up with this off the top of my head because I watched Dark Knight recently. So, this is the first part. Heath Ledger has taken on the role no one wanted. He's agreed to play the Joker in Christopher Nolan's movie The Dark Knight. Many A-list actors turned down the role, fearing inevitable comparisons to Jack Nicholson's legendary portrayal in Tim Burton's Batman, but Heath is ready for it. But how does he get into the head of a character known for his madness? And how could Heath know that this was his last performance? And for the person adjacent to Heath for it, I thought about it and just decided that the best person to talk to would be the character he's trying to get into and have the Joker talk. And so for the second part, have the Joker saying, the last head Heath Ledger got into was mine. And he didn't just visit like Nicholson. He set up shop. He spent time. He lounged. He cavorted. He played. Did you know I was his last visit? I couldn't tell you, and I wouldn't if I could. Some things are between me and Heath. What I know is that no one who gets in my head is ever the same. And that's all I got.
It's great.
That's great.
You know, great opening line, great button. I mean,
Yeah.
Great point of view as far as I haven't seen The Dark Knight, so,
it's worth seeing.
Yeah, terrific first line,
Yeah.
terrific button. So,
and it's such a creative way to tell the story of an actor through the last role he played. I think that's awesome.
yeah, absolutely thinking outside the box, which
Right.
is lovely. Yeah, lovely.
Thanks, Jack.
Great,
That was really wonderful. All right, so we go with Marta Fernandez. Marta, boom. Can you hear us, Marta? We can't hear you. I think you have to. There you go,
Can
Marta.
you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I fit in this idea because I don't have any public figure in mind yet, or I just have a sketch of a character that I've been exploring for some time. So I have a little piece that I wrote about these characters, but I don't have, it's not like I have any public, historical figure in mind.
So,
all right.
That's okay. All right, so this is the piece that I have, like a character study that I've been working on. Okay, Rose, more than anything, was a devoted wife. She was dedicated to her husband with an intensity I found extraordinary. She was frail and lackluster and endured her husband's demands with an incredible stoicism. Her husband, on the other side, was exuberant, iconic. He dressed in suits he wore with style, a hand pompously inserted in his pants pocket, his hair combed back straight and slick. Rose was not his only worshiper. I think she felt proud to have him, as if she owned a cherished trophy. But at home, in private, I often heard him punishing her with the most humiliating epithets, something I was not allowed to acknowledge. And so I had to pretend that Rose's tears were not visible and learn to go about my business without a word of concern. Once, having shown alarm for Rose's emotional state, her husband designated me the judge, and I had to listen to a long exposition of what had transpired between the two. I sided with Rose, but her husband continued to prove to my exhaustion his righteousness and Rose's iniquitous behavior. I knew then that it was futile to speak my mind, and that her husband would always rationalize and dispute his position until he was declared blameless. After that experience, I knew I should never attempt to persuade him to take responsibility for his actions. This refusal to take responsibility, I found, was universal. People heard what they wanted to hear or believed what they wanted to or needed to believe, and there was no way to persuade them otherwise.
When you said I, are you meaning there's a third character?
Yeah, there's like a narrator, and
Right.
she's watching this couple
Right.
and having this experience with them. But you know, that's basically.
I think the main thing is like, you need to make us fall in love with Rose, right? We need to see, the way you described her, it's almost as the way that the husband would describe her, and the way that the husband would excuse his behavior. And so we have to sort of feel, how do we fall in love with her? How do we see her differently? And I think that goes back to the Watergate novel, which is that, Pat Nixon would always stand stage left, but in the case of the Watergate novel, Malin pushes her a little bit more to the center, but it's certainly worth exploring. Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then, okay, let me bring it. So we have Margie. Let's bring Margie up. Margie, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We sure can. All right. So
Okay.
Margie and the Uma story.
Okay,
We are
so
all eager to hear about it.
okay. All right, I just came up with this now as part of the exercise.
Yeah.
I want to write about Huma Abedin, who the beloved assistant to Hillary Clinton and the tragic wife of Anthony Weiner. So much drama at once. The failed election of both her mentor and her husband, who could not keep from sending photos of his dick. Both of them rising stars who crashed, leaving her with what? I believe that she hasn't been very revealing about herself, so it would be interesting to explore what she has been through and what she has actually been thinking. And so the second part, I wrote in the voice of her nanny.
Mm.
Nobody really knows Huma. She's so wonderful, so smart, so ahead of any game she played. Hillary would call her at all times of day and night, and she always picked up the phone, whether she was playing with her daughter or in the middle of the bath. And her answers to Hillary always sounded so wise, thoughtful. But her husband, that crazy man, smart like her, clever. But they all ask why she stayed with him for so long, standing by his side as he ran for mayor, knowing of his compulsions. Only I really understood her. Only I really know why.
Great, great, Margie. So what I did was when I saw your piece, because we were in between exercises, I did a little Googling because I was curious, and I thought, oh wow, I think she is the kind of character that you want to write about. You don't need the nanny. You just
Right.
need her. She's what I found really interesting was that she had the role of gatekeeper, right? That's an incredibly intoxicating feeling of power. So the other thing that I found that I looked really briefly was that there was a documentary done about her husband.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that. It's
In
pretty
real time.
riveting.
In real time. Like
Right.
it was about his campaign. It wasn't
Right.
about looking back at him. It was they were doing about him running for mayor, and then
which is great because
yeah.
Again, it's about him, not her. And I just think it's a really great idea, and I really would encourage you to make her the center of the story. That's exactly what I'm talking about as far as people. Like, we kind of know who she is. We can almost grab it, but we need a writer to help us understand. And she circles power, and that's the kind of person. And she's a gatekeeper. It's a side note. Somebody just told me the story about Dick Cheney when W. Bush was looking to see who he was going to select as vice president. He spoke to Dick Cheney and said, "Get me the 10, get me people's names. I want names on a list." And Cheney said, "Fine." So Cheney went out and said, "We are considering," he spoke to all these people. He said, "We are considering you for the office of vice president. but you have to tell me everything about yourself. You have to tell me everything about yourself, any kind of weakness, and that might come out and explode. And so all of them gave Dick Cheney information. Now Dick Cheney goes back to W and says, these are the people, but they all have these flaws, and so the person you must choose is me. And Dick Cheney held all this information, so he became a gatekeeper. So people who are gatekeepers are really great to write about.
No, I'm fascinated about her. After that, when I watched that documentary about Weiner, and that he couldn't stop himself for whatever reason, but she also didn't pull back from him.
Right.
Until the second time around, but she's still married to him. That's the other thing. They're just separated.
Yeah, and that's the question you still have to ask yourself: why?
Right.
And that's a great question. It's great to begin to play with the question, for the author. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just curious. You said that you have a play that
we do. Yeah. We do. We have a play that we actually had a workshop of it last year. At the Betsy Hotel here in Miami Beach, and so she's one of the characters of the show, and it's been fascinating to learn about her. And so hopefully, whenever Miami New Drama is allowed to return, maybe that's one of the first shows we'll produce. But until then, I think the more plays written about her, the better. She's a fascinating figure. Overlooked, and we all sort of want to give verdict to her. We all are judges of her, and we say like, oh, it's because of her family tradition that she, we all try to justify her actions. But I think that if she's giving a voice, it'll be really interesting.
Well, what's interesting about her is that she does not give her own voice. She speaks very little about everything.
But to someone she sure does. To her confidence, she sure does.
Right. That's the thing. She still has a long life ahead of her. So there's an end game that she's playing. Right. So she's going to keep things close to the so that's part of the fun. It's a chess game, and you're trying to figure out somebody who doesn't want to be figured out yet.
Right.
Because that's not the last we'll hear about her.
Right. Well, thank you, Margie, so much. And then I think the last one, we're probably not going to have a chance to take more than this one. Then Elizabeth, let's bring you in. Unmute yourself. There you go. Elizabeth, can you hear us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm really enjoying this. So I have written plays before, so this is not the first time for me. My plays have been produced, but in the last 10 years, I've really focused more on, I'm a professor at FAU, and I work with 17th century theater, and I've written and published on women in the theater from then. So one play that I wanted to write about women, and so this is great exercise. It made me focus. And there was a young actress, Fabiana Laura, that came from an aristocratic family who in the mid 1600s ran away from her aunt's house where she was being raised to, and joined the theater. She eventually became a star. And before she became a star, though, Calderón de la Barca would specifically ask for her in roles in plays that he would write, Medusa being one of them. And there's no proof that he actually wrote the parts for her, but he did specifically ask for her. So here goes my, and she eventually, by the way, not only becomes a star, but becomes a famous and well-known theater businesswoman and director, owning her own acting company. So I met Calderón de la Barca when I was only 13 years old at my aunt's home. I danced and sang for him. His eyes followed my every move. It made me nervous and excited at the same time. At the end of my performance, he turned to my aunt and kissed her hand. "Thank you. You're a gracious hostess. I beg your forgiveness, but I must take. He put on his hat and left without saying a word to me. That's when I found the dark side of me. I will be his muse someday, I thought, and then leave him when I'm a star.
It's great. That's terrific. I mean, it's, yeah, really nice work. Reminds me just very briefly, but not completely, but about another film that I love, Phantom Thread, right? Where have you seen, Michelle? Have you seen?
I have not seen Phantom Thread.
Which one?
Phantom Thread.
No, I haven't seen that one either, yeah.
You know, it's he's the fashion designer, very, very sort of set in his ways and very demanding, and he meets this young woman, and then the film unfolds. It's an amazing film. It's probably my favorite film of the last 2 years. So.
Oh, okay, great. I have to watch it.
It's Daniel Day-Lewis.
That's his last performance, no? Before he retired.
Right.
Supposedly.
He'll come out of retirement again, but you know, he has to do that in order for him to believe wholeheartedly that this is the person. You know, it's his method. He's great.
Right.
He's amazing in it.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Well, Rogelio, we're sort of at the end of the road for this course.
Yeah.
This was outstanding to have you, really. And it really, you know, the beauty of this talk is that you gave us an insight of how you work. Yeah. You actually opened up your computer. You show us your extensive research. We went through the first scene of your play, and then we were able to share with the participants how the beginning of it was a great exercise. And I think it really excited us all into how to think about characters and think about telling the story from the sidelines. Right? The sidelines of history is really where you see the sausage being made. But it was outstanding. I mean, I leave, as you know, I'm very wounded physically today, but my spirit is it's really high and excited after this conversation. And any parting thoughts to our attendees? Any advice as they move forward in their writing?
No, I think I think it loops back to what I said at the beginning, which is that make sure, what I heard a lot of passion, and make sure that passion is going to carry over into 3 years. You're having a 3-year affair with a play. It may last longer, and you have to be prepared for that. So just be aware of that. Do you want to is this a person you want to spend 3 years with? And it's you need to do a little bit of soul searching before you start writing. And that's my and just be open, meaning start working on it. But if somebody wants to come into that world and sort of hijack the play, let them do it. Let them do it. Even if you've written 40 pages and you say, no, I can't go back. No, if that person is insisting on entering the play, let them enter, because they're gonna bring a spark. So yeah, that's sort of
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, and we might do something more with you, maybe in the future, something more with more specific, smaller crowd. And
yeah,
thank you so much, my friend. You're a master. I am honored that we get to work together. And so we'll hopefully see, once the theater is back up and running, the name Rogelio Martinez on our marquee, hopefully very soon. Well, thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Wonderful to hear your work. It excites me. So
you can always go to colony.org to see what's the next courses. All of them are free. Check them out. Thank you so much.